They broke you like it was a game. Now they're the ones choking on the same rules they wrote. Let that hit. They thought you'd never get back up. They thought you'd stay quiet. They thought they could treat your heart like a toy, play you, lie to you, cheat you, and walk away like nothing ever happened. But now, the player who wronged you is losing grip, losing sleep, losing control, because here's the truth they never saw coming. When you mess with someone who's connected to the universe like you are, you don't walk away clean. You walk away marked. Not by hate, not by revenge, but by a shift in energy that starts collapsing everything fake in your life. And that's exactly what's happening to them. They're under chaos. Not because you wished it, but because you walked away. And the peace you took with you, that was their only cover. Don't forget to show love back. Tap like, hit subscribe, and drop a 77 in the comments if you've felt this shift. Help this message reach more souls who need to know you don't need revenge when the universe plays it better. Let's spread this truth like wildfire. Now, let's break this down. See, the mistake they made was thinking your silence was weakness. They read your calm like it was confusion. They took your love for granted because they were used to dealing with people who beg, who chase, who crack under pressure. But you're built different. You were never their toy. You were their lesson. And the moment they lost access to your energy, their fake empire started shaking. At first, it was small, a missed opportunity, a friend turning distant, a project falling through. But now, it's chaos. Their relationships are crumbling, their reputation is leaking, their confidence is cracked. The charm that used to get them out of everything, it's not working anymore, because when a chosen one walks away, the lies lose their light. You were the stage. Now the mask is falling, and there's no one left to clap. They were used to being in control, pulling strings, making people doubt themselves. They studied your mind like it was a blueprint. Press this button, get this reaction. But one day, you stopped reacting. You stopped playing. That's when they started losing it. Because the worst thing you can do to a manipulator isn't yelling or fighting or proving your side. It's walking away in silence and letting the truth handle them. And that's what you did. You took back your power without a speech, without a war. You just stood up, and they lost their grip on the game. Now they're in the middle of a storm they created. And here's the twist. They thought they were the puppet master. But now they realize they were the puppet of their own ego all along. The energy is flipping. The same tactics they used on you, now they're being used against them by people they trusted, by systems they once controlled. Everything they dished out is circling back, louder, sharper, more chaotic. And here's what burns the most. You're not watching bitter. You're watching better. You're healing, glowing, moving in silence while the player drowns in the same game they built to destroy you. They can't stand it. They're obsessing, checking your pages, asking mutual friends, watching your silence louder than your words ever were. They're wondering how you're so calm, how you're untouched, how the one they thought was weak is now winning without needing to fight. But that's what happens when you stop begging the universe to fix it and let it balance itself. What they thought was a small betrayal has turned into a full-blown storm. Because you weren't just a nice person, they hurt. You were a trigger for their own downfall. And now they're under chaos, confused, bitter, paranoid, because they can't undo what they did. They can't unsay what they said. And they can't unsee the way everything is falling apart the moment you walked away. You flipped the script. Without revenge, without war, without lifting a single finger. Because when the universe marks someone who's been wronged with clarity and healing, the ones who played them don't just lose access, they lose the game entirely. The tables turned, the power flipped, and now the one who caused the damage is standing in the wreckage of their own actions, alone, exposed, and finally realizing they never had control. They just had your silence. And now that it's gone, they're spiraling. So now that the truth is hitting, let's go deeper. Because if you've ever been played, betrayed, or underestimated, and still found the strength to rise, this message was meant for you. Drop the number 777 in the comments if you know the tables have turned and the one who wronged you is finally facing the chaos they created. And if this message is speaking to your soul, show some love with a like, subscribe, or even a super thanks. Every bit of support helps push this truth further into the light. This isn't just content, it's closure, it's confirmation, it's a shift. And now, let's unpack this step by step. If you're really the chosen one, you'll feel it in your bones. Let's get started. Number 1. They thought they let you go, but they pulled the plug on their own power grid. They didn't just lose you. They lost the only thing keeping their storm from turning into a flood. Let's make this clear. You weren't just part of their life. You were the glue holding their chaos together, the light that made their mess look less ugly, the reason they were even able to function while pretending they had it all figured out. They didn't know it, but they were feeding off your peace like parasites feed off a living body, pulling calm from your energy, stealing safety from your spirit, drinking from your presence like it was endless. And you gave, and gave, and gave, because that's who you are, solid, loyal, loving, even when it hurts. But they thought your energy was free. They mistook your softness for simplicity. They convinced themselves you were just convenient, something they could reach for when it suited them, then push aside when their ego needed room to play. They thought you were replaceable. Now they know better. Because the second you walked away, everything started to fall apart. No more sudden clarity in the middle of their confusion. No more balance when they're spiraling out. No more emotional anchor to keep them from drowning in their own dysfunction. You weren't just a person, you were a covering. A spiritual firewall, a hidden force that kept consequences delayed, doors open, people patient. And now that you're gone, everything that was being held back is hitting them full force. They don't realize that half the blessings they were catching were ricochets from your alignment. Your light made them look shiny. Your peace made them feel balanced. Your energy made their mask feel real for a while. But without you, there is no cover. The doors are closing. The charm has dried up. The attention is turning cold, and they can't figure out why the same tactics that used to work are now falling flat. Because the truth is, you were the strategy. You were the stability. You were the miracle they didn't deserve, but got anyway. They're out here confused, scrambling for control, trying to replicate what they had around you with new people, new distractions, new stories. But it's not working, because you can't recreate the frequency of a chosen one. You can't download the impact of someone who was sent into your life to protect you from the very damage you caused. You were the calm in their storm, and they turned on you. You were the light in their darkness, and they mocked you for not shining 24/7. You were the peace in their chaos, and they called you boring because you didn't bring drama. Now they miss the same stillness they once called too quiet. Now they crave the same loyalty they once overlooked. Now they're haunted by the absence of what they never even took the time to value. They thought you were the sidekick, but you were the script. The whole damn plot revolved around your presence. And now that you've exited stage left, the show is a mess. No audience, no applause, no direction, just them. Standing alone in a scene they no longer know how to act out. Fumbling lines, panicking under lights that don't hit the same, looking around for a spotlight that disappeared with you. They tried to play the main character, but without you, there's no story. What they thought was an upgrade, freedom from accountability, space to manipulate new supply, room to be praised without resistance, turned into a spiral. A quiet one, but deadly. They're not posting about it, not talking about it, but they're feeling it. The anxiety, the restlessness, the confusion, and worst of all, the energy drain, because they didn't just lose a person, they lost the entire source of their stability. They lost the voice that soothed them, the presence that calmed them, the love that held them together when everything else was falling apart. And now they're stuck with their own energy, unfiltered, unmasked, unsoftened. Now they know what they really were. A storm hiding behind someone else's sunshine. They didn't lose love. They lost access to peace. And that kind of loss, you can't post about it. You can't rebound from it. You can't replace it with a quick thrill or a cheap copy. It hits when they're alone, when their phone is dry, when the noise fades, and all they're left with is themselves and the echo of the one they pushed away. So let them sit in it. Let them realize, slow and brutal, that what they discarded was sacred. Let them remember that you were the cover, not the chaos, the protection, not the problem, the peace, not the pain. And let them live with the truth that will never go away. They didn't just lose you. They pulled the plug on their only power source. Number 2, they thought they were running the game, but you were the whole damn board. They thought you were a pawn until the board shifted and they realized every move they made only built your empire. Let's be real. They came in cocky, chest out, smirk loaded, armed with charm, tricks, and recycled manipulation tactics that had worked on 100 people before you. They didn't see you as unique. They saw you as easy. Just another soft one, just another empathetic heart they could bend, twist, and leave behind once they got what they wanted. But what they didn't realize, you weren't soft, you were silent, and silence like yours doesn't come from weakness. It comes from awareness. They came playing a game with rules they never understood. Because you weren't playing checkers, you weren't even playing chess. You were the gamekeeper, watching from above, waiting, evolving. They thought your kindness was a weakness they could exploit. They saw your calm and thought it meant you were lost. But you were never lost. You were just watching them dig their own grave, one manipulation at a time. They tried to gaslight you, confuse you, trigger you, make you doubt your own intuition. But all it did was make your discernment sharper. You started seeing the patterns, started noticing the shift in tone, the delay in response, the little lies wrapped in sweet words. And instead of reacting, you studied. They didn't expect that, because people usually panic when confronted with deception. But you got quiet, and that silence. It wasn't retreat. It was recalibration. While they were trying to read your mood, you were decoding their entire character, and the moment you stopped explaining yourself was the moment they lost access to the controls. Because they weren't playing a fair game, they were relying on your confusion, your doubt, your loyalty. But the second you realized the game was rigged, you walked off the board and left them there, talking to their own echo. that's when the spiral began. They couldn't figure out why the tactics weren't landing, why the bait wasn't working, why the usual power plays were falling flat. They couldn't comprehend that you had outgrown the version of yourself they thought they were playing with. The truth? You were never the one being played. You were the one being tested. And now the lesson is over. They're still moving pieces, still bluffing, still throwing shade, hoping you'll re-enter the arena. But you're not coming back. Because you don't need to win the game. You already won by walking away. And that's the part they don't know how to handle. Because control only works when someone gives a damn about being controlled. And now that you've tapped into your power, you don't react. You remove yourself. They thought they were 10 steps ahead. But every step they took was leading them closer to exposure. They thought they were playing you, but they were really revealing themselves. Each lie, noted. Each tactic, recorded. Each shady move, stored in your spirit's archive, silently building your clarity. And here's the plot twist they didn't see coming. You don't clap back, you glow back. And when you glow with truth, masks melt on their own. Now they're the ones spinning in confusion, asking, why aren't they chasing me? Why aren't they hurt? Why are they so quiet? Because silence, when it comes from strength, is the loudest answer you'll ever get. You didn't just outgrow their game, you dismantled it. And now they're stuck, still pretending they're in control, still running plays in an arena that no longer exists, still talking like they're winning. When everything around them is falling apart, because the moment you stopped engaging, the power left the room, the illusion collapsed, the script stopped working. They weren't prepared for that. They built their whole identity on control. But you took away their favorite toy, your reaction. And without your energy to feed on, they're starving. Their influence is fading. Their charm is losing its grip. The people who once followed their lead are starting to see through the act. Because when you walked away, you took the light with you. And now they're stuck in a game that doesn't even exist anymore. They're fumbling pieces, making moves no one's watching, whispering stories that no longer hold weight. Because when a chosen one stops playing, the whole board goes silent. And here's what haunts them most. You didn't get revenge. You got clarity. You didn't prove them wrong. You just proved yourself right by choosing peace over chaos, growth over drama, power over ego. They'll never admit it, but they feel it. In their gut, in their mind, in their collapsing reality. You were the realest thing in their life, and they played you like a game. Now they know the chosen one wasn't their opponent. You were the mirror, and the game was always rigged against them. And now, it's checkmate. And they're the only ones still pretending it's not over. Number 3. They wore a mask to fool the world, but you had the nerve to see their soul. Their charm was a costume. Your presence was the mirror that shattered it. They were trained performers. Professional actors in the theater of manipulation. They knew just how to smile, just when to cry, just what words to use to seem sincere. They'd perfected the art of looking like the hero while playing the villain behind closed doors. It worked on almost everyone until they met you, because you weren't watching with your eyes. You were listening with your spirit, and the spirit never lies. You didn't fall for the polished version, didn't buy the rehearsed vulnerability, the accidental charm, the good person facade. They smiled. You saw the tension behind their teeth. They complimented you. You felt the hidden envy. They played nice. You noticed the micro-judgments buried in tone and timing. And the moment they realized you saw them, really saw them, they started to panic. Why? Because people like that thrive in fog, in illusion, in spaces where people don't ask too many questions. But your presence didn't come with fog. Your presence came with clarity, and clarity is deadly to a manipulator. You didn't shrink when they tried to dominate. You didn't flatter their ego when they fished for praise. You didn't laugh at fake jokes or play dumb when they tried to provoke you. You just stayed grounded, solid, real, and that terrified them. Because when your presence is a mirror, the mask starts to feel heavy. They weren't afraid of losing you. They were afraid of being seen by you. And that's the truth most people miss. It wasn't your absence that destroyed them. It was your awareness. It was the fact that your calm, knowing silence exposed everything they tried to hide. You didn't have to call them out. You didn't need to yell. You didn't even need to accuse them. You just stood in truth. And that was enough to make their whole performance fall apart. Think about history. Real ones always disrupt the illusion. Frida Kahlo didn't shrink herself to be digestible, and her pain spoke louder than any polite conversation. James Baldwin didn't shout. His presence alone forced people to sit with truths they couldn't escape. Malcolm didn't play nice. He saw the system and spoke with the sharpness of someone who could not be seduced by half-truths. And you carry the same essence. You don't match people's masks. You reflect what's underneath. That's why they tried to flip it, to spin a story, to paint you as the problem. Because when manipulation doesn't work, the next move is always reputation assassination. But what they didn't realize is your power was never in the image. It was in the reality behind it. They're out here crumbling, trying to patch up a persona that no longer holds weight, while you walk away, not confused, not bitter, but clear. You didn't just survive. You left with truth. You left with receipts burned into your intuition. And them, they're still standing in the ruins of their act. Not because you broke the mask, but because you never believed in it to begin with. Number 4, you weren't just love, you were mercy in human form, and they mocked it like a joke. They didn't just lose you, they laughed at their last chance to be saved. And now, the universe is laughing back. Let's be very clear, your presence in their life wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't random. It wasn't just chemistry, timing, or some casual connection. You were a turning point, a moment wrapped in human form, a living, breathing shot at redemption. But they didn't see that, because their eyes were too drunk off ego, too blinded by control, too addicted to destruction. You weren't sent to worship them. You were sent to wake them up. And instead of rising to the moment, they mocked it, mocked you. They confused your grace for gullibility. They mistook your love for weakness. They thought, just another soft one to use, bend and break. But what they didn't realize is you weren't just love. You were a mirror, a healer, a soul checkpoint they'll never see again. You were the opportunity the universe sent them when no one else had the patience. When even karma was about to give up, you still showed up with hope in your hands. And they shattered it. They played with it. They ran game, cracked jokes, and tested your boundaries just to see how far they could push. They chose their usual patterns, their lust, their ego, their cheap thrills. They spit in the face of transformation, then called it just vibes. But here's what no one tells them. The universe doesn't always punish through fire. Sometimes it punishes through silence, through absence, through loss. And when you left, It wasn't just a breakup, it was a spiritual eviction. Because you didn't just bring love into their life, you brought covering, you brought a calm they didn't earn. You were the reason some of their chaos didn't touch them, your light. It was hiding their shadows, your presence. It was holding off storms that should have swallowed them years ago. And now that you're gone, the storms are back. The peace is gone. The mirror is shattered, and all they have left is their reflection. They feel it now. They'll never say it out loud, but trust, they know. They know what they threw away. They know they can't find that kind of love again, not because it doesn't exist, but because the version of them that could have received it no longer does. They forfeited their miracle. They mocked the medicine, and now they're walking into a future stitched together by consequences. Why does everything feel heavier now? Why do things keep falling apart? Why do people keep leaving? Trust keeps breaking. Opportunities keep slipping. Because you're not there to carry the weight anymore. And let's not get it twisted. They'll try to rewrite the narrative. Say you were too sensitive, too emotional, too hard to handle. But those words, that's just damage control for a heart that knows it blew the best thing it ever touched. When you play with grace, you gamble with your future. They didn't just reject love, they rejected healing, growth, mercy. And mercy doesn't knock twice. Now the game is over. And the scoreboard, it doesn't show wins or losses. It shows the one thing they never thought they'd feel. Regret. Number 5. They didn't break you. They built the beast they can't unleash or escape. They tried to bury you, but didn't realize you were a landmine. Now they're the ones shaking from the impact. They thought they were crushing you, slowly, smiling while tearing you down from the inside. They wanted your voice to tremble, your confidence to crack, your identity to bleed out quietly under the weight of their manipulation. But all they did was activate the version of you that doesn't beg for clarity, doesn't chase love, and doesn't fall for performance. They lit the fuse. And now they're standing in front of the explosion. They didn't break you. They revealed you. They cracked the shell, and the fire came through. You used to explain yourself, used to try to fix it, used to play peacemaker, even in war zones where you were the only one bleeding. But something snapped, not in anger, in awareness. You woke up. Every lie sharpened your instincts. Every betrayal became bricks in the foundation of your new standard. Every back turned on you gave you direction. They thought their chaos would drown you, but you turned the wreckage into a throne. This version of you, it doesn't apologize for shining. It doesn't fold under guilt trips. It doesn't tolerate energy that drains, confuses, or disrespects. And that is what terrifies them, because now you're not chasing closure. You are the closure. You're not stuck in the cycle. You closed the door and burned the bridge behind you. They can't bait you anymore. They can't twist you anymore. They can't even access you anymore. And that silence, that peace you're walking in now, it's louder than any revenge could ever be. They underestimated what kind of power lives inside someone who has nothing left to prove. Someone who found peace in the wreckage. Someone who took the ashes and said, "Watch me build." You're not cold. You're clear. You're not bitter. You're unbothered. You're not vengeful. You're disconnected. They're still trying to figure out where it went wrong, still replaying the last moment they had control, still confused about why their usual tricks don't work anymore. But you know why. Because you're not that version of you anymore, the one who tolerated, overextended, dimmed her light, questioned her gut. She's gone, and in her place stands someone who knows, who sees, who doesn't need to prove, chase, or defend. You don't just survive now, you transform. You discern, you rise, and you do it in silence. They thought they were the storm, but they woke up the earthquake. This version of you can't be broken, baited, or fooled. And that realization, it's not just breaking their illusion of control, it's haunting them. Number 6, they laughed at your warnings. Now they're choking on the truth they ignored. They mocked your instincts like noise until it echoed back as prophecy. They didn't just ignore your intuition, they mocked it. Laughed at your knowing, rolled their eyes when your spirit started picking up on things their words never revealed. They called it paranoia, overthinking, drama. But you weren't reacting, you were reading. Reading shifts they tried to hide behind fake smiles, reading tones that cracked when their lies couldn't stay smooth, reading energies that no mask could cover up. They thought they were masters of deception. They thought your heart made you soft. They thought your sensitivity was a flaw. But what they didn't know was your sensitivity is a weapon, a radar, a spiritual alarm system that doesn't need facts to feel the storm before it comes. You weren't guessing, you were receiving, you weren't unstable, you were ahead of time. And that's what scared them most, because deep down, they knew you were seeing what they were trying to hide. They just hoped they could gaslight you fast enough to make you doubt your gift. They'd smirk and say, "You're reading too much into it. You're making it up. You're being dramatic." But now the exact things you sensed are playing out publicly. Now their little secrets are slipping out of every crack. Now the same crowd they fooled is backing away slowly, watching the mask slide down their face in real time. And you're just quiet. Not out of fear, but out of confirmation. Because when your intuition is that sharp, you don't need to argue. You don't need to fight for the last word. You just wait, and the truth will show up on schedule. It always does. That paranoia they laughed at, it was prophecy. That insecurity they mocked, it was insight. They didn't just underestimate you, they underestimated the silence. Because your silence wasn't surrender, it was space. Space for the universe to do what your words didn't need to finish. Now they're panicking. Why? Because the same gut feelings they mocked are now happening to them. The same betrayal, the same confusion, the same emotional chaos they put you through is sitting in their lap like a gift they wrapped themselves. People are turning on them. Trust is collapsing. Their image is cracking in front of the exact audience they used to perform for. And here's the twist. You tried to warn them. Your truth wasn't an attack. It was a lifeline, a warning cloaked in compassion. But they spit on it. They mocked the gift that could have saved them. The universe doesn't punish first, it warns. And when you laugh at the warning, the silence that follows isn't peace, it's the pull of karma. Now, they hear nothing but that silence. The same silence they weaponized against you, the same silence they laughed at when you were trying to explain what your soul already knew. That silence, it's not yours anymore. It's theirs, and it's screaming. Number 7, the puppet master just got snatched by their own strings, and now they're dangling for everyone to see. Keep pulling strings long enough, and one day you'll yank down the entire illusion on your own head. They used to walk through life like they were directing a movie, every person cast in a role. Every conversation carefully edited, every lie rehearsed. They thought they were untouchable, too clever, too smooth, too far ahead. But you weren't a pawn, you were a plot twist. And now the puppet master is tangled in a web of their own making, panicking in the exact chaos they used to orchestrate for others. They built their whole identity around control, not peace, not truth, not growth, just control. They got high off confusion. They loved when people second-guessed themselves. They thrived when others fought each other while they stayed neutral, smiling, pretending innocence, hands clean. They whispered just enough to start a fire, then stepped back to watch it burn. Always the victim, always the misunderstood one, always 2 steps ahead, until karma took the wheel. Because no matter how good they were at playing the game was never theirs to control. And now it's turning on them like a machine that knows its master is corrupted. The same web they spun to trap others, it's closing in on them. The people they used to triangulate are comparing notes. The lies are no longer landing, they're leaking. Old alliances are crumbling. New enemies are popping up from the very circles they once ruled. It's not just backlash, it's spiritual chess. And they just got checkmated by their own moves. They spent years pretending, one face for work, one face for love, another for family, another for the group chat. But you can only wear masks so long before one slips. And when it does, it shatters everything. Now they're being manipulated, just like they used to manipulate. They're being lied to with the same tactics they once perfected. And worst of all, they know. They recognize the game because they created the rule book. And that's what's driving them insane, because deep down, they know this isn't bad luck. It's consequence. It's what happens when you twist too many stories, burn too many bridges, and use too many people. At some point, the energy you've put out circles back around, louder, faster, and harder. No one trusts them anymore, not even their own reflection. And the ones still pretending to be loyal, only staying to watch the fall up close. They're paranoid now, jumping at shadows, overthinking every conversation, worried about secrets coming out, worried someone's plotting behind their back. Just like they always did. That's not fear. That's recognition. They're finally being shown what it's like to live in a world they poisoned. They thought they were the puppeteer until the strings wrapped around their own throat. You didn't have to lift a finger. The truth did what your words never could, and now they're stuck in the very mess they swore they could control. The puppet master isn't pulling the strings anymore. They're the one hanging, while everyone else walks away. Number 8. They lost their script the moment you refused to be their puppet. The show falls apart the moment the star walks off stage, and they never realized you were the star. They had it all mapped out before you even knew you were in a performance. Every word, every reaction, every tear, you were cast as the quiet sidekick, the emotional punching bag, the one who'd stay no matter how hard they pushed, the one they could cry to, scream at, cheat on, blame, and still expect applause. But the moment you stopped playing along, their entire production cracked like cheap glass under pressure. They thought they were the director, that this was their story, that you were just lucky to have a role in it. But you weren't born to play support in someone else's chaos. You were sent to bring truth into a room full of illusion. They called you dramatic when you spoke up, called you cold when you finally walked away. But deep down, they weren't hurt because you left. They were shattered because you rewrote the ending. They weren't in love with you. They were in love with your role, your loyalty, your forgiveness, your light. But when you stopped playing the fool, stopped rehearsing pain for their entertainment, They lost control of the narrative, because without your energy holding the show together, the lights dimmed, the stage got quiet, and the audience, the people they once fooled with fake vulnerability and twisted tales, started asking real questions. Why are you always the victim? Why do you always need saving? Why do your stories never quite add up? You didn't even have to expose them. Your absence did it for you. When you were in the picture, you carried the emotional weight. You made them look balanced. You softened the sharpness of their manipulation. You gave them grace they didn't earn and presence they never matched. But once you pulled your energy out, it was like pulling the battery from a fake machine. Suddenly, it stopped working. The people who once took their side, now noticing cracks, now remembering how you always kept it real, now regretting doubting you, because you were never the background character. You were the one with the story. You were the one with growth, with clarity, with direction. And they were just addicted to the applause that came from your energy. They didn't lose you. They lost the illusion that they were ever in control. Now they're stuck, trying to improvise a role that only made sense when you were still feeding the scene. They can't explain the collapse. They can't understand the silence. They're watching the same crowd that once praised them slowly walk away because the performance is over. And what are they left with? A broken script, an empty stage, a reputation built on borrowed light. But you took your light back. You exited their show and stepped into your own. And this time, you're the one writing the script. Number 9, their life is falling apart because yours finally came together. They blamed the umbrella for the rain, then cried when the storm hit. They tried to make you believe you were the chaos, that your emotions were the issue, that your standards were unreasonable. They called you intense, dramatic, too sensitive, because the truth you carried threatened the lies they lived in. But now they're choking on their own narrative, because the moment you got clear on who you were and walked away, the lie unraveled. They didn't understand it then, but everything that made their life feel stable was you. Your presence was the anchor, your silence, your peace, your patience. That was the gravity holding their scattered world together. While they were out acting reckless, careless, heartless, you were the spiritual filter, absorbing chaos they never took responsibility for. You weren't just in the way. You were in the gap, the one standing between them and their own self-destruction. You were praying over them when they didn't know it, protecting them from storms you never caused, quietly redirecting the energy in rooms where they disrespected your name. But they mistook the blessing as background noise. They thought they could mistreat the source and still drink the water. They disrespected the root, then acted surprised when the fruit stopped growing. What's wild is you never wished for their downfall. You just stopped absorbing the consequences they were too cowardly to face. You stopped playing savior to someone who never saw you as sacred. And the moment you stepped back, the cracks in their world got loud. The relationships they idolized, crumbling. The friendships they weaponized, turning sour. The fake confidence, evaporating. The image they held onto so tightly, glitching in real time. Because it wasn't their strength keeping things together. It was your alignment. Your vibration kept the wolves from their door. Your light kept the shadows from overtaking their house. And now that you've reclaimed your power, the energy is shifting violently, but not toward you, away from you. They're spiraling, but you're stable. They're loud, but you're centered. Because you finally saw what they never wanted you to see, that you were never the problem. You were the piece they weren't ready for. They didn't lose a person. They lost the protection that came with you. And when you walked out, that grace walked with you. So now, when they wonder why everything is falling apart, why the phone doesn't ring, why the room feels cold, why doors are slamming that once swung open with ease, the answer is simple. They lost access to the calm because they disrespected the keeper of the storm. You're not bitter, you're not angry, you're just unavailable to chaos. And without you there to hold the house up, it's collapsing in silence, brick by brick. Number 10. What they called control was always desperation in disguise. It wasn't dominance, it was fear dressed up in a fitted mask. They weren't powerful, they were panicking. But they disguised that panic in tactics that looked polished. They didn't raise their voice, they raised your doubt. They didn't threaten directly, they twisted your feelings with silence and half-truths. They played it smooth, like they had it all figured out. But behind the charm was a shaking hand holding a script they were terrified you'd stop reading. To the outside world, they were confident, calm, in control. But you knew better, because confidence doesn't need to manipulate. Power doesn't demand you shrink. Real love doesn't make you question your worth every time you speak up. They thought they had you on a string, hot one day, cold the next, give you praise, then snatch it back. Call you too emotional when your soul started catching on. Praise your loyalty until it no longer served their ego. They don't want partnership, they want power over your peace. But here's the part that turned their mask to dust. You stopped needing them. You stopped feeding the illusion. You stopped walking into conversations designed to keep you apologizing for how deeply you feel. You stopped engaging with manipulation dressed up as affection. You didn't raise your voice, you just rose out of their reach. And that shattered them, because control only works when you're still afraid to lose them. Once you healed that fear, they had nothing left to grip. See, they weren't feeding off your love. They were feeding off your confusion, your silence, your self-doubt, the space between your truth and your voice. So the moment you started choosing clarity over chaos, when you started breathing again without their approval, when your no got stronger than their charm, they started to unravel. They're not spiraling because you blocked them. They're spiraling because you're no longer the mirror they used to feel in control. You weren't the one trapped in their game. They were trapped in needing your reaction to feel like they mattered. Now, they're standing in an empty performance hall, pulling strings connected to no one, saying all the right lines to a crowd that doesn't exist, rehearsing manipulation that has no stage. They didn't lose power, they lost their illusion of it the moment you stopped flinching. And here's the truth they're finally facing. All that control, all that mind play, it was never strength. It was a survival strategy for someone who never felt whole to begin with. You didn't just walk away. You exposed the truth by no longer participating in the lie. And now that they're alone with their own silence, they're not angry you left. They're terrified you'll never come back, because without someone to control, they have to meet the one person they've been avoiding, themselves. Number 11. Your revenge was your resurrection. You didn't burn bridges. You became the fire they can't walk through. They thought the pain would break you. They hoped the betrayal would paralyze you. That you'd spend your nights obsessing, unraveling, questioning your worth while they paraded around like they'd won. But you weren't interested in revenge. You were interested in resurrection, because real power doesn't throw stones. It builds thrones from the rubble. And that's exactly what you did. You didn't chase closure, you became closure. You didn't drag their name through the mud. You rose so high their name couldn't even reach the altitude you breathe at now. Let's be real, they were betting on your destruction, that your glow would dim, that you'd shrink from the shame they tried to plant in your spirit. They thought they'd destroy you quietly, then ride off into a world where the version of you they broke never healed. But instead of bending, you broke free. You didn't post cryptic messages. You didn't go on a revenge tour. You got quiet. You got sharp. You got focused. And that silence, that discipline, that glow they can't explain, it's haunting them. Because nothing hits harder than watching the person you tried to break rise without a word. They came to bury you. They didn't know you were a seed. See, they thought they'd watch you fall apart, fall down, fall silent. But you rose, and when you rose, you didn't just come back stronger, you came back untouchable. That's the kind of comeback you don't have to announce. It walks into the room and shifts the air. It makes their chest tighten when they see you, unbothered, aligned, alive. They called it ego when you set boundaries, called it bitterness when you pulled back, laughed when you started over, mocked when you began healing. But now the tables have turned so hard they've shattered. They're stuck watching you eat at the table they once thought you'd never reach. And no, you're not inviting them back, because you finally learned. Some people weren't meant to come with you. They were meant to reveal to you what not to carry into your next chapter. You didn't just grow, you grew out of them. Now your glow is a mirror. And when they look in, they don't see the version of themselves they tried to project onto you. They see the emptiness you once filled, the grace they mishandled, the loyalty they lost. You didn't even have to speak on it, because your peace says everything. Your silence became the loudest sermon they ever heard. And here's what stings them the most. You were their chance. Their opportunity to level up, not through money or clout, but through alignment. You were a spiritual gift disguised in human form, a walking reminder of what integrity, depth, and love actually look like. And they treated it like a game, like something common. Now they're stuck realizing they were in the presence of rare energy and didn't know how to honor it. And when rare leaves, it doesn't come back. You didn't lose them. They lost access to you. Now they're haunted, not by what you said, but by what they know deep down. You're never coming back, not because you hate them, but because you finally love you. So let them sit in the shadow of your elevation. Let them feel the weight of the space you once filled with light. Because sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destruction, it's creation. You created a new life, a healed soul, a version of yourself so whole that they no longer recognize you. And that's the punishment. They have to watch you become what they never believed you could be, and they have to watch it from the outside. So now you see it. What they meant for destruction only fueled your elevation. The same pain they used to weaken you became the foundation you rebuilt your power on. You didn't just survive what they did. You became something they can't even name. And that's the real ending to this story. You rose, and they fell into the silence they created. If this message hit your soul like truth, show love by pressing like, subscribing, and dropping the number 777 in the comments to claim your glow up. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. We rise together, and the light spreads further.